Today, I want to talk about failing fast, learning faster, and embracing iteration in product development as a whole. I've worked with a lot of product teams, and one of the biggest things that I found out of all the teams is just before going live that people are scared of actually launching products, right? And I think this comes from the notation that people have around failure, right? People are usually punished for failure, and this is something that is common practice in society and workplaces, etc., etc. And I get it for businesses, right? If you have hired a professional, somebody that you, especially in startup environments, if you've hired a professional, somebody you need uh, to kind of like get stuff done, you don't have time for them to kind of like test things out, right? You kind of like want them to get on with it and do the job at the highest quality possible, right? So, because of that notation of failure, people are usually very much scared to press live, press go, right, on most of the things. And I also think it's because of kind of like how a lot of people think, right? People want to do a lot of the bits and bobs, kind of perfect everything before the big launch, right? And I think the big launch and trying to perfect things are the main two parts of this recipe that break everything. The thing is that most of great products out there are actually not built this way, right? So if you think about any thing like Google, Facebook, etc., etc., they're not built this way. They're kind of built in a very small release iterative process, right? And that is the thing that I always try and encourage a lot of teams that I work with is that it's really about getting the product into the customer's hands, failing fast, or rather learning fast, right? I usually like to call it learning fast, right, rather than failing. So it's really about that, right? It's really about those slow releases, shipping fast and failing fast. And the keywords here is really shipping the product, getting into customers' hands, and learning fast, right? You can hear kind of the opposite direction that I am taking here, right? Instead of doing kind of like a perfect product launch where you have everything perfected before the big launch, then you kind of like have a lot of risk with that. Whereas if you're doing smaller releases with smaller customer groups, right, then you will have less risk of reputational damage and things like that, right? Like I hear a lot of especially in the startup space that customers will come and they'll never come back, etc., etc., right? And I think that's totally false, right? And we've seen it over and over again with almost, all of the big companies that use this iterative process, right? Think about Airbnb, right? Their first website actually didn't have a reservation functionality whatsoever, right? It was just a way for you to contact people within the same city that you are in, right? To be able to get some accommodations. So it's really about that iterative process. And if you are actually solving a problem that the customer has, and your product kind of like gradually gets to that point where it's good enough to use, and it's really solving the pain point, then customers will come back, right? There's unless if you don't iterate and you don't grow, then customers won't come back. If you don't kind of like keep on marketing to them and kind of like enticing them to come back, right, then they won't come back. It is as simple as that, right? Don't perfect products before you launch. Don't plan for the big launches right when you are trying to just validate the idea, trying to build an MVP and taking something out into the market, right? Don't think about 1,000 customers, think about 100 customers to roll this thing out to and start getting some early feedback, right? Going live is going live, whether you're going live to 50 customers, to 100 customers, to 100,000 customers, you are going live, right? And that is what the important thing is about when it comes to product development and design. It's really about shipping, 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 right? And ship as often as you can, ship as fast as you can, and iterate on what customers are saying and giving them the different features and functionality that they're looking for. I think it is really more about the size of the audience. If you can control how much people you ship to, then you definitely have a little bit more, less risk, right? If you are a big brand that is kind of like rolling something out new, etc., right? So you have a little bit of risk in that way, and you can kind of like open the tap slowly. There's a colleague of mine who likes using that term, open the tap slowly, right? Like, don't just kind of like blast the fire hose when you launch. Open the tap slowly, see how the market is responding, etc., before you get out there. So just to close off, just to illustrate my point a little bit further, if you go back to the Wayback Machine and just look at kind of all the big companies, think of Google, think of Twitter, think of Facebook, think of Uber, think of Airbnb, right? Or even YouTube, right? Just go back to the Wayback Machine, which is the website where you can kind of like, go back in time on each product, on each website, right? And kind of like see where they really started. You will be able to see that most of these products were kind of like just bare bone basics, right? Obviously, we live in a product and we live in an age now where there's a lot of products that are at a certain standard, and that is fine because you're also not starting kind of like from designing things from scratch, right? Like there's a lot of brand kits, there's a lot of UI kits out there that you can leverage off and design systems that will help you to kind of deliver the product that you want to deliver at the same quality and standard, modern quality and standard that we have currently, right? So that's it for this one. My name is Farama Henry. I'm a product designer based out of Johannesburg, South Africa. If you are interested in more content like this, check out our other stuff, or go on dobetterux.com to sign up to the Dive Into Product newsletter. This is the podcast version, of course, and that newsletter comes twice a month, so bi-weekly, sometime halfway through the month and right at the end of the month, if you want to call it end or beginning, depending on how optimistic you are, right? So cool. I'll catch you in the next one.